Next speaker is Sophie Daniel. I have the privilege of working with Sophie on a regular basis. She's a physical penetration tester here. She has great stories about places she's been able to get into, some of which she's going to be talking about today. And I'm going to go ahead and preempt this out here. No, these are not all stories about Walmart, so it doesn't mean you can go take what you hear and go repeat them. They're going to be a nice composite of lots of things she's done. So she's a great component of our red team and allows us to make things better. And so hopefully you'll get to experience some stuff there and learn some stuff and go protect your organizations based on what you hear from her stories. So where did Sophie go? Oh, she's back there. She's on her way. She was expecting me to throw more T-shirts. Right on. All right, so let's give Sophie a big welcome and a round of applause on her way up.
Thank you.
How are you going?
What? Oh, no, I got
the clicker.
Okay, cool. Working out the technical difficulties here. Hi, everybody. Jeez, that's pink. I am not sorry either. All right, y'all have heard a lot of technical talks today. This is not going to be one of those, but I want to tell you one of the stories I've got about red teaming, one of my adventures with Red Team. So for those of you who don't know, red teams are a group of people, maybe one person sometimes, who are hired to hack the company, to break into the company. And then we find all of these vulnerabilities. We work with our security teams and the blue team in order to patch these problems so that hackers cannot use them again in the future. Hackers that might not be so nice and have the company's best interest at heart. And so the short story is that we are a group of people who are paid to think like criminals. My name is Sophie Daniel. I am one of 9 members of our red team. I work with some of the most eager, talented, and mischievous hackers I've ever had the pleasure of encountering, and I don't see any of you here today, and you will answer for that. Oh, hey, guys. Oh, my people are here. So I work with the hackers, but I am not one. Suffice it to say, I know nothing about computers. This is a Raspberry Pi to me. You guys speak a completely different language. I hope you understand that. Walking into a room of people who work in information security as just like a layperson, I don't understand 75% of what you're saying. I can kind of get the gist of it. I kind of got the context, but it's like I spent 1 year studying Spanish in high school. I don't get most of it. So computers aren't really my thing. So what do I do on a red team? My skill sets lie in social engineering and covert entry. So my team hacks the computers. I manipulate the users and break into the buildings that they work in. And it's a really awesome job. It's mine. You can't have it. People assume when they work in secure facilities that things like badge readers and locks and receptionists and armed guards are going to keep the bad guys out. But with the introduction of things like two-factor authentication and UB keys, it's getting harder and harder to hack the company from the outside. And so sometimes the best way to get access to those things that you want is by actually physically breaching the facility. We're a lot more lax with how we handle information inside our secure facilities than we are with how we handle that sensitive information outside of the facilities. And so there are times when actual hands-on access to physical assets is necessary in order to conduct these adversarial simulations that the red team and I do. Because if I can gain access to a facility, to a person inside the facility, or to a piece of information that person has, then I can gain access to a lot of your sensitive information. Maybe you're protecting credit card data. Maybe you're protecting health records or your company's proprietary information, the secret sauce that makes your company who they are. If I can get into the building, chances are I can gain access to that, which bypasses all of the networks and network security and firewalls that you've got in place right now. So the covert entry side is obviously my favorite. There is no cooler feeling than being in a facility in the middle of the night and nobody knows you're there, and you're not supposed to, technically not supposed to be there. It's a really thrilling feeling. But if I'm being totally honest, I, unfortunately, don't get to use my toys as often as I would like to. Because for one reason or another, it's usually easier to convince somebody that I need access to whatever I'm aiming at. And social engineering is a funny thing, because a lot of people see what I do or hear about what I do, and they get kind of freaked out. They think that there's some sort of dark magic that goes into it, that I can hypnotize someone by smiling at them, or that I can, there's a Jedi hand wave, and all of a sudden people are word vomiting their social security number, and it doesn't work that way. And while I'm on this slide, I absolutely love it. Please keep perpetuating this idea that all hackers are creepy and hate people and hang out in the shadows in black hoodies. Because if this is what our users are looking out for, they're never going to see me coming. What I do is more like, my button isn't working. Oh, there we go. This is more like me. Kind of cute and adorable. I smile and I wave and I disarm suspicions. And then once I'm in your facility, my goal is to rip the place apart. So, cute but dangerous. It's really what it comes down to. You're not going to think terribly highly of me at the end of this talk. I'm warning you now. Because what hackers do, what criminals do, is they look for weaknesses. We want to know what the weaknesses are in your network. We want to know what the weaknesses are in your building and in your people. Social engineering can get incredibly intrusive, and I'm kind of mean. But I'm supposed to, because I am hired. That's what my job is. I'm supposed to think like a criminal. And criminals don't care if they hurt your feelings. You're never going to have a burglar break into your house, rob you blind, and leave an apology note on the fridge. Maybe if you live in Canada, but not here. Not here. So just keep this in mind as the story progresses, because it's relevant. So I want to tell you, I can't unfortunately tell you about any of the engagements I've been a part of while I've been here at Walmart. Things get a little bit more hush-hush when you work for the largest company in the world. Imagine that. So I want to tell you about one of the last physical breaches I was really excited and proud to be a part of before I came here to Walmart. And for the next few slides, I want you guys to think like bad guys with me. Does anybody know who this is? Y'all are my people. Yeah. We'll sing the whole song at the after party. All right. So, on to business. This Target was an international business. They had locations all across the US and Europe, maybe some in Asia, but I think it was mainly those two continents. And they were headquartered in the United States. The Target facility we were aiming for, there were two guys that I was working with and me. There was Kevin, who was my hardware guy, and Brian, who was our penetration tester. Kevin and I were going to be doing the physical breach. And Brian was going to kind of be hanging out in the sidelines, listening over comms and making sure everything was okay, possibly live tweeting it, like you do. So the facility we were targeting was a medium-sized office warehouse, housed about 300 to 400 employees, so it wasn't huge. It was decent sized, and it was located in France. I live a very hard life. I break into buildings all over the world, and it's wonderful. Okay. Our goals were essentially very simple. Kevin and I were going to figure out a way to get in somehow. We had drop boxes and listening devices, bugs, that we were supposed to plant in some conference rooms near the C-suite offices, and then get out. And the whole point was to see if Kevin and I or the bugs we planted were detected during the breach or sometime after the fact. First thing I do when I get a target address is I am going to immediately go to Google Maps. I start doing open source intelligence gathering, and I want to see what the area looks like around it. I want to see what the building looks like. And in this case, there was the building, the parking lot was off to one side. There was some sort of barrier around the entire perimeter of the building, separating it from the parking lot and everything around it. And there was one real main entrance near the parking lot. Upon closer inspection, yeah, I realized that this was a palisade fence. These things suck. They have three, I don't know if you can see on the top there, there's like three very sharp prongs sticking out of the top, which is bad news for a burglar because one wrong move and you are a burglar kebab. And I don't like that. I don't like being a burglar kebab. So I keep doing a little bit more intel. I realized, intelligence gathering, I realized that the entrance, the one main entrance and exit to the parking lot are these turnstiles. I'm sure everybody's probably seen something along these lines. And I also was able to see their badge readers, which is potentially a really big deal. Because if I'm a burglar who knows what I'm doing, which I am some of the time, I can possibly bypass your technology here, your badge reader technology. Or I could clone a badge, depending on what know-how I have, what equipment I have, and if I know how to bypass this particular one or clone it. So I did. I knew exactly what I was looking at, and I was like, oh, that's that thing. I can definitely clone. So now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, hang out in the parking lot and get an excuse, make an excuse to go up to somebody and clone their badge. Which is when, around this time, we got an email from the client saying, oh yeah, by the way, they said that thing that all pen testers hate, right? The badge readers are out of scope. I know. And I included this tweet from Redshift because it's so true. That is out of scope, said no attacker ever. So he told me to stay away from the badge readers, and he had a decent excuse. He wanted, he said they knew their badge readers were out of date. They knew that was a problem. They were working on fixing it. The short and sweet of it was find other vulnerabilities. We know about that one, find another way in. Oh. I'm just going to go back real quick. Does anybody see a problem with this picture? Yeah, you've given me a ladder. You've given me a perfect place to climb, and I love climbing. So I was super excited about this. There's no pointy things on top of that. By the way, I call these fences Mr. Stabby because I'm 8 and I name everything. So yeah, at this point, I'm like, okay, badge reader is off the table, but I have a ladder. It's perfect. There's no stabby bits on top of this thing. Yeah, I'll just climb right over, no problem. So a couple days later, or well, much more later, a couple months later, we arrive on site. And we determined pretty quickly that my latter idea was not going to work terribly well. There were night guards at this facility. There was not a time, day or night. We went by this facility where the lights weren't on. It looked like a party was going on in the guardhouse. So the fence, the perimeter was pretty well lit. And because of the neighborhood that surrounded this facility, it was a little less than upscale, and there was a pretty constant police presence on foot, driving around in vehicles. And so we were like, maybe not. I was sad. Kevin was actually kind of pleased that this wasn't going to work out. He wasn't too keen about jumping over the fence, but I was like, Trats, okay, well, we'll figure something else out. What is up with this thing? So, criminals are going to take the path of least resistance. I could have risked it all. I could have potentially decided, yeah, I'm going to jump over this very well-lit turnstile within full view of the guardhouse and potentially get caught by an angry cop in a foreign language where I don't speak the language, or a foreign country where I don't speak the language. Maybe, or figure out another way in. I've got to find a way, find a good reason, a good enough story to convince somebody on the other side of that fence that I belong in there with them. And so I started doing a little bit more digging on the employees that worked at that site and the local community in the area. So here's the thing. Everybody wants something. Every company has goals, every person has desires, and this is just a short list of some of the things that can drive human behavior. I want you to think for a moment about what your weakness is. Everybody has something that could potentially be used against them. For instance, my weakness is James's laugh. James has the best laugh. And if you haven't been by the lock sport table, go by there and say hi to Ben. His boyish, charming smile is the best thing in the world. It's my weakness. So definitely go ask him to smile for you. Because I love you too, Ben. Almost every time I hit a facility, I am able to find something innocuous, something that seems completely unrelated, not sensitive at all, that I am then able to use to breach a facility. In this case, I found a couple marks whose driving force, whose motivators were idealism and recognition. They had started becoming heavily involved with a local food bank near Paris. And since their involvement, donations had nearly doubled to this food bank. Volunteering opportunities had opened up. They had gotten a lot of their community involved in serving and giving back to the people that lived around them. And they were really proud of this, as they should have been. And they had given a couple interviews to local media, like just local city papers, about how they had managed to make this happen. It was quite an accomplishment. It was a feat. And when I say they wanted recognition, I'm not saying they wanted a pat on the back and to be given a gold star, because, I mean, that's nice. But more so, when you have buy-in, when your bosses see and your bosses' see what you are doing, the better chance you have of having more resources dedicated to that cause. And so at this point, maybe you can start putting the pieces together. I was coming up with a plan in my head. The pretext, there was the two of us who were doing the physical breach, were me, Sophie, hi, and Kevin. Our aliases were Bridget and Ted, actual people who worked for this company in their corporate social responsibility department. And these are the people, if if my Mark's story went all the way up the chain and headquarters heard about it, these are the people that it would have interested most. We put together an email chain. We sent this email chain using a domain that was very similar to the company's. So instead of bridget@company.com, it was bridget@company-csr.com. And this is a very common phishing technique. Most people in this room would probably notice something like this being off in their email. Most average users, not so much, especially if the stuff that is in that email is emotionally charged for them. The basic story here was that we were two people from headquarters for the Social Responsibility Department. We were on our way to France for a sustainability retreat, corporate sustainability retreat, somewhere in Paris, somewhere in France, and we were stopping in Paris on the way. We put together this email chain. Something along the lines of, good morning, Ted, are you going to the November conference in France? We made this look as if it was coming from like January, all the way back. This was way back. Ted responds to Bridget, yeah, the whole family's coming. We haven't seen you in a while. I hope we see you there. How's the dog doing? Something along these lines. So like they're just having a conversation. Bridget says, fantastic, and while we're there, we should swing by our Paris offices and meet the team there. I've not met any of them. Ted responds, yeah, that's a great idea. In fact, I've heard about this team in our Paris offices that has been doing really great work in the community. And I would really like to swing by and say hi to them. I want to shake their hand. I think it'd be great to meet them. Now this is just kind of going back and forth. And there are a few things you can do to make your con game a little bit more believable, a little bit more likely to be successful. One of them is to place a sense of urgency, a timer on your mark. And by the way, I'm just going to call our mark now because it just, for expediency's sake. Okay, we want to kind of light a fire under them. We want to say this is a limited time offer. We don't want to give them a lot of time to consider what the situation looks like. Because if they start asking questions, if they have a lot of time to think about the situation, they might step back and say, I see some red flags here. This doesn't feel quite right. The longer you let them stew in that, the more time passes, the better chance they are of catching something you've done wrong, like the domain. They're more likely to see that. So, after we arrived in France, and about 2 days before we were supposedly departing for this retreat, we sent this email back and forth. Hey, Ted, when are we meeting that team you were telling me about? It's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited. Have you reached out to them yet? And Ted responds, oh, no, I thought you were going to do that. Yeah, okay, I really hope we're not too late. I'll go ahead and send a response. And then we sent this entire thread. We added Mark with the addition of the following email. Oh, no, can you read that? Okay. Good morning, Mark. My name is Ted, and I am a CSR project manager based out of headquarters. I heard about the inspiring work you and your fellow volunteers have done in your community at the food bank, and you were doing amazing things and making the company proud. A colleague and I are in your area on our way to a conference, and we would very much like to come by and meet you while we're in town. Regards, Ted Green, Corporate Social Responsibility Project Manager. And just to add a little bit of pixie dust to this, I included a quote from Mother Teresa. The worst part about sending a fish is waiting. Especially if it's a spearfish. If you're just doing a spray, you can kind of leave it and come back and look at the numbers later and go, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But with a spearfish, when you're encountering somebody over the phone or trying to social engineer them face-to-face over a counter, you know immediately. You know immediately if they're buying what you're selling. You know immediately if they are going to give you the access that you've asked for. With phishing, it's just this big pot of unknown, and I just sit there and stew in it. I hate it. I was never good with cliffhangers. But in this case, I had to wait about 3 minutes. Before Mark replied, I am so excited. Yes, please, in broken English, by the way. This guy was not a native English speaker. He spoke French. I am so excited about y'all coming to visit. I'll move some things around. Do you think you could come on Thursday? And I was like, yeah, I think I can come on Thursday. I can make this work. He then said, okay, all right, what hotel are you staying at? I'll send a driver to come and get you. By the way, do you have any dietary restrictions? Because we'll have lunch for you too. Or maybe, would you like to go to dinner? I know this great restaurant. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I oversold. I'm a little too hard on the gas there, Sophie. So Ben and I started studying a lot. We had 2 days to catch up on all of our social responsibility expertise. And we spent the next 2 days quizzing each other and asking each other questions. It turned into a game. You're going to recycle that, right? Because that's what a socially responsible person would do. The corporate social responsibility folks, they handle things like environmentalism and worker safety and healthcare and all of these things. And so, they cover a pretty broad swath of information. And so I wasn't terribly worried. I can BS my way through a lot of stuff. But we also found employee badges online that we were then able to duplicate, so we looked even more like we were there to belong, or we belong there. So that day, we had them pick us up at one of the nicest and most exclusive hotels in Paris. Like, we were really playing this up that we were bigwigs. And we were there. We were expected. Within about 30 minutes of the driver picking us up, they dropped us off right in front of those turnstiles and Mr. Stabby. They expected us, though, so we were in. We didn't have to jump over Mr. Stabby, which really was worth it. So we got up to the other side of the turnstiles. We walk into the building, and there's Mark with a couple of his colleagues, and we shook hands all around. He was very excited to have us there, and they took us up to this conference room with a view. Lunch was laid out, and they had a PowerPoint slideshow set up, ready to impress us. I wanted to keep control of the situation. I wanted to be asking the questions, because if they turned around and started asking me a bunch of questions, I could get myself into trouble. And so I let them do most of the talking, and about halfway through, they asked me, so do you think there's any way we could possibly get buy-in, as in resource buy-in from headquarters? Could we possibly get more funding to get more people involved and to donate to this food bank? And I said, I like you guys a lot, and I really believe in what you're doing. I think we can make that happen. But you all know. The cake is a lie. We already went over this. I'm not a good person. So a little bit later, we're having this conversation. I'm letting them pour out their souls to me about their passion for these projects. And I think Kevin had it set up to where his girlfriend was going to call him at a certain point during this engagement, so he could look down at his phone and go, I'm sorry, I have to take this 1 second. And he grabbed his backpack. Hey, honey, and walked out the door. And what's in the backpack? All of the drop boxes and the listening devices. I love the yes. So he was able to go and plant everything that we had been sent there to plant. He dropped the drop box in an office, I think, and then planted the bugs all throughout different conference rooms while I was keeping our marks distracted. Mischief managed, mischief accomplished. We shook hands all around after the meeting was over. We'd had lunch. We'd really made built a good business relationship with these people. Created some good networking bonds. And from there, we left. About 2 days later, I want to wrap up the interaction. I don't want there to be any loose ends. And this loose end, in this case, was the request for funding. And so I had to send him an email that said, we were so honored that you hosted us, and we really believe in what you're doing. Unfortunately, I just got word that CSR's budget is going to be incredibly restrained over the next couple years. I'm so sorry, but we're not going to be able to give you any extra funding. That being said, you have our moral support, you have our backing, which is not something that's not a lie. That's not a lie from my perspective. That's not a lie from their company's CSR perspective. It's true. So we wrap everything up. When we talk about security, we throw around this term APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats. I talked a little bit about this earlier during the speaker panel. Before I was in security, I was a journalist. I worked at a radio station. I was a stay-at-home mom for several years after that. I got lucky jumping into this field and jumping into this particular job. There's nothing advanced about my resume. There was no slide at the beginning of this talk that, outlined a 20-year covert ops career. Or, I wasn't undercover law enforcement. I'm just me. And I'm able to breach majority of the facilities that I go after because people don't do little things like verify I am who I say I am. So like I said, I did not come out at the end of this looking the best. I know I'm not a great person. And you might think right now that, who are these red team folks? They're monsters. Maybe that's true, but we're your monsters. We're your monsters, and we're here to protect this company and everything that falls under its umbrella, including its associates. If you want to keep chatting with me, if you want to swap stories about social engineering or physical pen testing, I'm hide and seek on Twitter. I would love, love, love to keep chatting with you guys. If you have any questions, be in touch. Or you could ask right now, because I have time.
Yeah, we have some time, so just another reminder, no swearing.
Please.
Okay, there we go.
I have delicate virgin ears. Okay, what's up?
So when you go to hospitals, banks, places like that where you're the customer, do you ever get really bad feelings about it, and how do you handle that?
The worst is schools. The worst is the schools. Yeah, I think I've just been. I was not born thinking this way. It's something that I have developed through exposure, listening to talks by Deviant Ollam or reading Chris Hadnagy's books. It slowly turned my mind into this paranoid witch. And so I do constantly look for flaws in security wherever I am, whether it be, at a Walmart or at a hospital. It can get pretty crazy how paranoid we get. What's up?
I've got two questions.
Okay.
One is, do you ever check on Mark in Paris to see if he quit his job in shame or anything like that? The second question is, you got brought into this field by somebody saying, hey, you thought this was interesting, you don't have the right resume or education or whatever, but here's a shot.
Right.
Have you been able to do that for other folks? Is that a way other folks can get on your team? Or Do you have to wait for the right resume and certifications to?
I think the
work with-
right person, it's going to be really obvious when the right person comes along, whatever their resume looks like. I can't answer that. That's my boss's territory. I'm not going to step on that. But about Mark's perspective, or about the Mark situation, there have been times when I have genuinely lost sleep over things I have done to people, mostly because that was before I started insisting I'm not including names in my reports, which kind of sucks, because if you've ever written a physical report, that means that I'm taking that whole 20-minute presentation I just gave you and condensing it down to the red team agents were able to breach the facility through social engineering methods. That's it. And it kind of sucks that I can't tell the whole story, but at least I'm not getting people fired, which has happened. Go ahead.
To answer your question about talent, on my team, it's everywhere from high school only to several of us a couple of us that nearly finished PhDs, and all anywhere in between. It has nothing to do with it. Certifications, no certifications, doesn't matter. It's about the person and the team fit. Yep.
So, as someone whose role is essentially to be a professional liar, do you ever find that the habits that you use in the workplace, the mannerisms that you use in the workplace, ever bleed into your personal life? And how can one? And I ask that seriously. I mean, really, I think that job would be amazing and a lot of fun. But at the same time, I wonder about the actual personality effects that might affect you in your real life.
I want to usurp this question real quick. Is Carrie in the house? Carrie, are you here? There, Carrie. So Carrie, when I interviewed her, one of the questions I asked was basically that same question, worded better. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Shade.
Worded. You know what I mean by that. And one of the things that cracked me up about her is she's like, I have a real problem with lying, except for when I'm doing it from social engineering. It's completely logical, makes sense. I am completely free. And that is the person you want, right? Somebody that says something like that has that morality background that says, I understand why I'm doing it, and I'm free within the context of the game, the challenge, the test, right?
Absolutely, yeah, that's definitely a consideration that I have to look at on a pretty regular basis. They tell people to, like, if you wear a uniform at work, take the uniform off when you walk inside. My ex is an architect, and she would walk through the door and immediately go into sergeant mode, and just no, go calm down. And once she learned how to do that, her life got a lot better. I have to do that too. I gotta kind of take the hat off and set it down and walk away, and I don't think it's a big problem in my personal life, because I have really deep, fulfilling friendships with people, good relationships with my family, and I don't need to use it.
So I want to know which of you want to imitate Gandalf to stop social engineer, besides Tanner.
You shall not pass. I get it. Okay, who's next?
Hi. Oh, okay, it is on. I was really wondering, seeing where you guys are located, what team you guys are located with, why isn't it with global security? Why, I know a few of those gentlemen, and mostly gentlemen, and they all seem to be very squared away, former FBI,
right.
Types.
Let me answer that. First of all, we won't probably go into organizational stuff here. If you're a Walmart associate, we'd love to talk about that elsewhere. But one thing is we focus on the IT side, so while she does do that kind of stuff to get in, it's for the purpose of getting access to the network.
Yeah, you put it really well the other day, Tim. What I do is a means to an end. I'm not testing physical security for physical security's sake. If I were, I'd probably be elsewhere. But I am working for the red team with the goals of getting them access. Yes, you've been waiting so very patiently.
Thank you. In regards to social engineering phishing attempts, you mentioned trying to close the window of time that they have for basically being a salesman. But do you find it better to time your emails towards the end of the day or the beginning of the day, to where they're either, I got all this big pile of work or emails that came in the morning, or in the afternoon, I want to get out of the office?
Right. It's It depends. I send mine mid-morning. This one in particular, I sent right first thing in the morning because I'm impatient. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah, what's up?
So surely you've had a time where you've been all prepared, ready to go. We got this, and you get there and it's a total bust. Have you?
I mean, I told you guys about that one time I messed up at the previous facility. For those of you who weren't here, I basically I had a series of physicals, and I messed up. Ended up kind of getting caught, but it was a catch and release type of situation, and so I tried again, and I got in the second time. And as I was leaving, I kind of made a face at the camera, and so once they figured out that I had gotten in the facility again, they took that camera footage and sent it to all of their other locations. And I'd forgotten I had more physicals to do for this company, and so they knew my face. And that's probably the worst mess up I've ever had.
We have time for like one or two more, probably.
Okay, what's up?
So, as someone who kind of gets vibes from fellow friends and employees that they no longer feel like they can trust me when I'm around because of the things I do, how do you maintain that sense of loyalty and like trust with close ones as well as like your company that you work for with that line of
this
business?
has actually been an issue with when I work very closely with blue teams because they're like social engineers in the room. Nobody's talking. The thing is, I have an on-off switch. I'm not always on. I love this quote by Jason Street. If you haven't listened to Jason Street's talks, you definitely should. If you like what I do, go listen to Jason Street. He has this quote of, I won't try to steal from you, kill you, and cause total financial ruin unless you pay me to first. Something along those lines. And so, first of all, for the Walmart blue team or anybody that works security in Walmart, I can't use insider knowledge on these tests. I have to prove that I got it from the outside. So I could be buried in the middle of the SOC and hear everything that's going on, and it's not going to matter because I can't use it. As far as like friends and family loyalties are concerned, yeah, I just turn it off. I tell them I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try to con you unless you or your employer pay me to. And if my friend works for somebody that's hiring me, then maybe that's a conflict of interest, possibly. You know, we'll look at that when it comes around. But that's not been a problem.
I think some of you are changing your answers on here.
What?
These things keep going up and down.
I don't even.
Kind of thought it was like locked in, but it's like they're not. It's not like you're voting twice. You're taking your vote and re-voting somewhere else.
I didn't know you could do that.
I think they're ready for you
They
off the
can't
stage
see.
because they're going to pseudo RF you.
They
Well-
can't see it.
One last question. JJ.
So outside of Walmart, have you ever used your skills to land a new job? Or that confidence from being a social engineer, how have you used that to move?
Right. Yeah, I think I understand your question. The thing is, social engineering is not just the big, scary hacker thing. Social engineering is manipulating someone's behavior or feelings. And so if you've ever stopped for flowers for your wife on your way home from work because you want to make her feel nice, that's social engineering in a way. And so, yeah, I use my personal skills to make small talk with people. I use my personal skills to make new friendships or get new jobs, whatever the situation might be. Yeah, it's something that comes in handy. For everybody. Everybody could, I could even learn on my communication skills, so.
Awesome. All right, well, let's give Sophie a round of applause. Thanks. Thank you. I'll steal this from you.